need to tell you something first. This is not the kind of ghost story where something appears for a moment and then disappears. This is a real account experienced by 3 friends who tried to prove that the most haunted forest in Europe, the Hoia Baciu Forest, was nothing more than superstition. They thought they would find nothing. Instead, they found certainty, a terrifying certainty. Something followed them, and its presence wasn't just physical. It attached itself to the mind. To this day, one of them still wakes up standing upright, facing the corner of his bedroom. And the worst part, he is already smiling before his consciousness fully returns. This is deeply disturbing, my friends. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. You've probably heard of Hoia Baciu, often called the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania, located west of Cluj-Napoca, Romania. In October of 2014, when the cold air had just begun to bite into the night, 3 college friends made a reckless promise to enter it. Ryan, the rational one, Marcus, the hard skeptic, and Ethan, the one responsible for recording everything. They carried minimal gear, just flashlights and Ethan's camera. Their goal was simple: document proof that the myths about disappearances and apparitions were lies. They were ready to prove it to the world.
At exactly 11:38 p.m., they entered through a path known Alai Salam Boyana Rotunda. The place already had a reputation. But Ryan and Marcus were excited. Marcus even joked, "If we meet aliens, just make sure the footage looks good, F." Ryan checked his compass carefully and confirmed they were moving in a straight line. At first, the forest felt normal. Cold, dark, silent. A typical European forest at night. Their footsteps became the loudest sound around them. For the first 10 minutes, everything was under control. They talked about college assignments and vacation plans. Ryan explained the forest supposedly had magnetic anomalies that caused people to get lost. But he was confident in his navigation. At that moment, all of them believed this trip would end in laughter and a failed documentary because nothing would happen. They were ready to claim a scientific victory over superstition. But exactly 10 minutes in, everything changed. Marcus, the skeptic who had been the most excited, suddenly stopped walking. Not slowly, not hesitantly. He froze. His head tilted slightly, like he was trying to tune into a sound too low for normal hearing. The relaxed expression on his face tightened instantly.
He raised his hand, signaling Ryan and Ethan to stop. They looked at each other, confused by how abruptly his behavior shifted in the middle of that silent forest. Marcus leaned closer and whispered, his voice caught in his throat. And then he asked a question that made the temperature feel like it dropped. "Do you hear whispering?" Ryan exhaled in annoyance. He had spent the entire night trying to keep things logical, and to him, Marcus sounded like he had already surrendered to the myth. "It's just dry leaves moving," Ryan replied. "We're in a forest, Marcus. Sounds happen." The problem was, all 3 of them knew there was no wind. The leaves around them were perfectly still. Not a single branch moved. The silence felt dense, almost physical, pressing against their ears. And the sound Marcus described didn't resemble wind at all. It felt close, unnaturally close, as if someone stood only a few steps behind them, yet invisible. Ethan, whose job was to record everything, immediately checked the audio on his camera. He replayed the last few seconds. At first, breathing, footsteps. Then after Marcus stopped, the camera's highly sensitive microphone captured something else, a faint layer of sound. Strange. Not words, not any recognizable language, more like overlapping vibrations, as if many thoughts were trying to become words, but never fully formed. The recording was deeply unsettling. It sounded like a broken radio frequency, or like thousands of people whispering inside their minds at the same time, and all that mental noise was leaking into the air. Even Ryan had to admit, there was no natural explanation for that sound. Unease began creeping into their thoughts, so they made a quiet decision. They would not talk about it anymore, because maybe, if ignored, it would stop. They kept walking, but now, something between them had changed. None of them wanted to talk anymore. It wasn't a decision, it was instinct. Every sentence they tried to say felt forced, heavy, wrong, as if the forest itself resisted spoken words. So eventually, they stopped trying. They moved forward in complete silence, accompanied only by the soft sound of footsteps against the soil of Hoia Baciu. This silence wasn't peaceful. It was instructive. It carried a message. Staying quiet is safer. Speaking would attract attention, and attention they did not want.
They walked close together, yet mentally isolated, each trapped inside their own thoughts, while the air itself felt heavy, pressing against their heads, forcing vigilance. Time slowed. Every minute stretched. At exactly 11:52 p.m., Ryan raised his hand again. Their flashlights illuminated a wooden trail marker nailed into a crooked tree. A trail marker in an old forest wasn't strange, but this one was wrong. Ryan stepped closer and touched it. The wood felt cold and smooth, too smooth. It looked new, clean, completely untouched by rot, impossible for a forest known for constant moisture and age. Carved into the clean surface was a symbol that immediately drew their attention. 3 vertical lines. Uneven, rough, alike scratched using a nail or a stone. Fresh. Marcus laughed nervously. Come on, Ryan, probably just campers messing around. There were no signs of camping anywhere nearby. His laughter sounded empty. Ethan didn't laugh. He lowered his camera for a moment and shined his flashlight onto the carving, then onto Ryan, then Marcus. And a cold certainty settled inside him. They were being counted. The symbol didn't feel like graffiti. It felt like a tally mark. And they were the targets being recorded. His breathing stalled in his chest. Without needing discussion, they agreed to leave immediately. They didn't want to stay near something that felt personal. They walked faster, trying to distance themselves from the strange energy surrounding the carving. Ryan forced rationality. Marcus kept looking behind them.
Ethan kept filming, hoping the camera would capture proof. 5 minutes later, 11:57 p.m., fear turned into near panic. Ryan stopped again. The same marker stood before them. Same tree, same path, same clean wood. Impossible. They were certain they had been walking straight. But something had changed. The carving was no longer 3 lines. There were 4. None of them said it out loud. No one wanted to be the first to acknowledge it, because admitting it would mean giving permission to whatever was around them to exist. The silence returned, this time filled with a painful, unspoken terror. The forest around them didn't just grow darker, it felt closer, narrower, as if invisible walls were slowly sliding inward, shrinking the space around them. The boundaries of the forest no longer felt physical, they felt psychological,
like the place itself was designed to corner its victims, to make them feel small. And then the worst possible thing happened. Ryan, the navigator, the logical anchor of the group, panicked. He stopped walking, looked at his compass, then up at the black ceiling of trees. He no longer knew where north was. The compass spun uselessly in his hand. The one person meant to keep them grounded was now lost inside a forest he was certain he had already mapped in his mind. While Ryan struggled with direction, Marcus kept glancing behind him. He was sure something was walking with them, always one step after his own. Every time his foot touched the ground, a faint second step followed. But whenever he turned, nothing. It wasn't a chase. It was synchronization. Something was moving perfectly with him. Watching, waiting. That single delayed footstep became the worst kind of terror. Not a jump scare, a reminder. They were being monitored, measured, followed by something that had no need to hurry. Marcus almost screamed, but remembered the unspoken rule of silence and swallowed the fear back into his stomach. At 12:07 a.m., the tension snapped. Ethan lowered his camera. For the first time, he refused to look through the lens, because he felt if he recorded what was about to happen, it would become permanent. Barely audible, he whispered, "Don't react. Don't move. There's someone between the trees." Ryan refused to look. He bowed his head and closed his eyes. If he didn't acknowledge it, maybe it wouldn't acknowledge him. He clung to the illusion that this was exhaustion, stress.
Nothing more. But Marcus looked. He had already been broken by the psychological pressure, and he followed Ethan's gaze into the crooked gaps of the Hoia Baciu trees. At first, nothing, just shadows. Then his brain understood the shape, before his eyes did. 20 meters away, a silhouette stood. Not hidden by darkness. Wrong. Deeply wrong. It was too tall, too straight, too rigid. Not a human body made of flesh and bone, but a human outline forced into reality. Like a shadow that didn't belong to anything, standing inside their world. And its face had nothing. No features, no eyes, no mouth. Just perfect absence. A black void where a face should exist. And Marcus felt himself being pulled toward it. A horrifying certainty washed over him. The figure wasn't chasing them. It was waiting. Waiting for them to realize. It had been there the entire time. Watching. Counting. Anticipating their reaction. Marcus felt language becoming unnecessary. Because this entity didn't communicate with words. It spoke directly, through fear. Ryan saw Marcus's empty eyes, and the faint smile forming on his lips. He knew he had to move. Now. Ryan grabbed Marcus's arm and pulled him forward as hard as he could. Marcus followed. But the entire time he was dragged away, he kept looking back, still smiling. Not a happy smile, a recognition.
Like he had just seen an old friend he'd been waiting for. At 12:16 a.m., they reached the dirt road marking the outer boundary of Hoia Baciu Forest. They never turned around. They ran straight to the car. During the drive home, Marcus didn't say a single word. He sat in the back seat, staring out the window, eyes wide open, yet seeing nothing. That silence was more frightening than any whisper inside the forest. Days later, Ryan and Ethan finally gathered the courage to watch Ethan's recording. They discovered something impossible. The tall, faceless figure never appeared on camera. The lens captured only trees, darkness, and their terrified faces. But there was one detail that froze them in place. Throughout the footage, especially after the 15-minute mark,
Marcus occasionally nodded. Slowly, he nodded toward empty space beside him, as if something was talking, and he was agreeing. The camera recorded no voice, only Marcus's heavy breathing. Eventually, Ryan and Ethan were able to sleep again. The memories still haunted their dreams, but life moved on. Marcus's life did not. Several nights each week, he wakes up standing upright, facing the corner of his room, and he is already smiling. The smile exists before his awareness returns. That smile means he is not alone. The entity from Hoia Baciu never appeared on camera, but it attached itself to him, and it seems it still counts him every night, reminding him that he has already been recognized. The price Marcus paid for trying to prove the forest was just a myth. So friends, if Marcus's story gives you chills, imagine standing there yourself, alone in Hoia Baciu Forest, realizing something is counting you. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only avoided. If you've ever experienced something strange, especially in forests or remote places, write your scariest experience in the comments below. Leave a like, share this story with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue uncovering stories that should probably stay hidden. Until next time, stay aware and take care of yourselves.